following is a conversation with Chris Iba. Chris and I went to elementary, middle, and high school together. Before attending Berkeley, Chris was able to live for a year in Brazil, where he was able to discover the art of computer science. In this conversation, we discuss a little bit about computers, calculation, and cryptocurrencies, which I find very interesting, and I hope you do too. Please enjoy this conversation with Chris Iba. Chris, welcome to Geigonomics. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
What have you been up to these last 4 years that we haven't seen each other? We went to, just for people who don't know, we went to elementary school together, middle school, and high school together.
Yep.
And where have you been these last four and a half years?
Oh man, I think I've been kind of all over the place, but to keep it brief, so when I left Huntington High School, I decided to take a gap year rather than starting straight into college, and so I moved to Brazil for a year, and that was a super interesting experience. I think there's a famous quote that goes like, education does for the mind what experience does for the soul. So I think, that was a big time of me just like getting experiential knowledge, like seeing what the world looked like, learning a different language, and just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. And I remember I went to Sao Paulo and I got to visit a Google campus out there. And I had already started to kind of like technology, or be interested in it, but it wasn't like, I didn't think that was like my career path for sure. But when I got there, I saw all these people coding and problem solving around different issues that were like super specific to Brazil. And that was kind of the big turning point when I realized like, if I learn how to code and, learn the computer space, you can apply that knowledge to all these different fields. And I could kind of not pick exactly what I wanted to go into and just like, be a problem solver in whatever field. And so after that, I started at Berkeley studying computer science. Definitely a lot of ups and downs, a lot of sleepless nights. But I guess I got to the point where I was I did 3.5 years worth. And so I have one more semester left, but that was right when this pandemic hit. So I decided to take off a year and work on a startup. I think I get a lot of the value that I get out of being in college relies mostly on the connections you make and like the in-person kind of conversation. So I didn't see a good reason to go back to school, and you could finish whenever. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to.
Cool. What is this startup you're working on?
Yeah, so the startup we're working on is called Cleos Live. So we have 4 co-founders. We're based out of Boston. And the whole idea for the app is to connect celebrities to fans over video games. So you can imagine a use case is like, Bronny is playing GTA on Twitch or something, right? And he wants to play with like a couple of his fans. So you could log on our app and just like start an event real quick, and we'd find you fans to play with you. And then, you could make money off of Twitch or Facebook Gaming or YouTube or whatever you're streaming on, as well as like playing with your fans. And also 10% of our profits go to the charity. It used to be the charity of choice for that specific talent, but there's weird regulations with Apple, so as of right now it's just charities in general. It goes towards donation, to, I don't know if it's going to be, we haven't fully fleshed it out yet because we're changing up the business model, but it should either go to a charity of the month or, we're going to ask the talent for suggestions on those charities.
It's very cool. One thing that I really wanted to talk to you about was artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
For me and the other lay persons who want to know more about it, what can you help us understand?
Yeah, so I'll preface and say I'm not the best explainer when it comes to some of these abstract topics like AI. see, do you have a specific question exactly?
Well, I guess what is it about computer technology that has you most concerned or most passionate about something that other people should definitely know about it?
Okay, so I guess one thing that I'll say about AI is, AI is like this black box thing. So you can think about it as there's like classical computing and programming, which is like, hey, I want to build a website, right? So I build a red button. So I tell the computer everything that I want. I want this button to be circular. I want it to be red. When I click on it, I want it to do this, right? You're telling the computer everything. Whereas what gets weird is in AI, you don't know the answers to the problems, but what you do have is a ton of data, right? So if I had a ton of pictures of a red circle and a blue circle, right? And they're all just different pictures. And I also had a label that said, these are all the red circle pictures and these are all the blue circle pictures, right? I don't even know how to identify which one is red and which one's blue. I can just give it to the computer and the computer can solve that problem for me. And so I don't know if that makes a lot of like...
Yeah. I think from my limited understanding as well in technology and AI, there's the narrow, I guess I think it's the narrow AI, which is that computational function analyzing data and making choices based off the data. And I guess the general AI is what could be the fear that most people have of AI taking robots and making them like Terminator, like super soldiers taking over the world. Or what I like to study in economics is the Ludite Fallacy, which is essentially the idea that the Ludites were a group of people who were anti-technology because they're saying that this is just taking our jobs. But if you look at the horse and carriage makers, they got replaced in the market by the automobile. And the whole automobile industry is just a new industry that has provided people with more jobs. And so I think really there's never going to be not enough jobs for people. And I mean, if we're looking at this past year, technology is not the reason that people are losing jobs. It's been these regulations that have been imposed, to put it lightly, on people that is the cause for unemployment and all these other factors. And I want to embrace technology. I think that it's just a part of our social evolution, but it comes from people who are making, like you were saying, these social media, these brands, these companies, and you were saying we have like one shot to do it right, or not right necessarily, but to do it, to create it, and then maybe a new technology comes along, and we have a new style or type of social media or interactions, and that's what I find very interesting.
Yeah. So let's see. I think to start with general AI, I think that's the one that scares people the most, right? That's that's like the scary Terminator kind of situation. I will say, as of right now, we're not very close to a general AI. What we have right now are a bunch of classification systems. There's obviously new, more powerful AI systems out there, but at the very core of what these systems are doing is they're just doing pattern recognition. And so they're really good copycats, is pretty much what we're saying. That means that, there's not really generation of thought, right? Like, I guess if you got you could get super philosophical or, into the neuroscience of it. But like, I would say personally that I think that we have we can generate our own ideas, or that those ideas come from somewhere else, right? A computer doesn't have that. They have a set of data and they can only, respond based on that set of data. And so I think that's, one thing that kind of Team Human has.
Yeah.
I think, you touched on autonomy and the automation system. I think honestly it's a really exciting time. I think we're going through a lot of hurt because this is a transition time, but just like you were saying, like carriage drivers, and then you go from that to a car where you no longer need this worker. It's like, well, maybe those people got hurt in the immediate time, and we obviously got to do our best to take care of those people, but in the long term, quality of life increase for people, as well as newer types of jobs. And I think what's really cool is like right now I think things are getting super logical with like all this technology everywhere, but the future will be like inherently creative, because like once the platforms exist out there, then like people are going to be making like art. People are, like, think about it, if you had no time and you didn't have to work on super technical things, like you could just create whatever you want. Like there's going to be a lot more of that kind of time. So I think we're in a weird transition period, but if we can get through this, the world will be a pretty exciting place.
That is the most beautiful thing, is to have people creating art and specialize in what they're interested in, and not being productive or working for the sake of necessity. Once our initial needs are taken care of, which is like food, shelter, water, or whatever, safety.
Mm-hmm.
That then you have the ability to have free time or leisure time or productivity in what you want, not necessarily being like an agricultural farmer or something like that. And that totally comes from technology. Mm-hmm. It frees us up from the perils of life, as some would say, or the labor. Mm-hmm. And this is really interesting because we do have this. This is, I guess, a more historical, philosophical thing, but the Puritan work ethic that totally tries to instill working for, as a virtue in itself. Mm. And that's just that's something that many people subconsciously have accepted. And I'm a big believer in creating art in whatever ways you can. And I think we can jump right into it, but Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, I'm a big believer in those, and having the potential to kind of not devalue over time, as some fiat currencies tend to do, under the responsibility of people who are just gonna rob people, for a lack of a better words. But yeah, so you were mentioning that you're getting into cryptocurrencies as well.
Yeah.
And I had my friend Tom on last week, and he's coming to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin from. He's also a math and computer science guy, and he's like, because of the technology, this is why we're going in this direction. And I'm into economics and philosophy, and I'm like, well, this is why we should go into this direction, because this is better than the alternative. So please, enlighten me on your perspective of cryptos.
All right, let's see. So I remember like the first time I ever heard about Bitcoin was in high school, and Sean Elmore, if you remember him, he would come into like one of our classes, and he'd just be like, "Dude, you gotta buy this AntShare thing. You gotta buy this." And I'm looking at it, and it's like 0.0001 cent. That's like how much it's worth. He's like, "Dude, it's gonna go to a cent. It's gonna go to a cent." And I'm just like, "What are you talking? Like, what are you even talking about?" And then later on, we realized that Bitcoin and all of this like cryptocurrency stuff is here to stay. I think I was originally very interested in it from a computer science standpoint, just because you can kind of I think, especially now in the modern era, like there's a lot of people that are either losing confidence in their government, or don't trust their governments, or even if it's not government, it's like these high overlords that are like controlling our lives kind of thing, right? And blockchain just allows for those entities not to exist. Like you just completely decentralize everything, so there's no third party you're working with. And, it's like freedom in a lot of ways. So I became very bullish on that. And yeah, right now I'm trading, a little bit of Bitcoin investing. I invest in Ethereum as well. And just like looking at new up and coming projects and seeing where things are going to go in the space. And I'll throw like, little money into whatever altcoins I believe in.
As a side note, what platform do you use to invest in your cryptocurrencies? Because I think that's also what people need to learn is like, where do I go if I want to get into it?
Yeah. I would say there's a couple questions you kind of have to figure out for yourself. So that's like, what's most important to me? Is it security? Is it liquidity? Or is it like, I don't know. There's a couple different factors to go through. But if you want to go with complete secure, like no one's going to steal that Bitcoin and you're just going to lock it up, you can get like a Ledger wallet, which is like a USB that'll hold all of those Bitcoins or whatever kind of coins. And then if you're looking for a more liquid solution, I would say for any beginner, just start with like Coinbase. I think it's just an easy way to dip your toes into the space. And then, there's like Binance, which is another big brokerage. Or if you want to do like leverage trading, you can go on Phoenix or Bybit.
Cool. One of my friends who's into Bitcoin recommended River Financial. Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with
I'm not familiar as well.
Cool. I love what you're talking about with, people being able to take the freedom of possessing their property back. And unfortunately, we don't have that today with our own money. What we work for, what we earn, what we spend, it's this fiat currency, and it is totally vulnerable to losing its value due to its sole nature of relying on 100% trust and 0% verification, with the Federal Reserve hoping that they won't do something radical, like create more of it and devalue the individual monetary unit. And with blockchain technology that Bitcoin exists on, as the author of the Bitcoin Standards, Saifedean Amos, talked about, it's 100% verification and 0% trust.
Yep.
You don't need trust in making deals because you know that this is verified. It's going to be what it's worth when I transact it with other people. And that's something that's very beautiful. It's very decentralizing, and it totally makes the government or the states who run these fiat currencies and create services without asking if people want them or not. It makes those entities obsolete. And I'm a big believer in individualism and the philosophy of anarchism, which is just the concept of no rulers and no kings. And that includes people who are allowed to impose their will over you simply for the sole nature that you're born into their system. I don't think that these relationships are healthy for people. I think, national divorce is something that could be in our country's future. And I think that's okay. And I totally believe in localizing to the largest extent that you can with people who are making decisions for you in your life and your family's life. And I'm super stoked to see that the up and coming generations are recognizing that technology, this has made people more productive. This isn't a cell phone, an iPhone. It has every single book in the world on it. Like the information is there. And I like what you said, that we're becoming more logical. And that's what we need, is to become more logical in our thinking. And then you have these intellectual revolutions. And I think that's what we're, simultaneously experiencing with a monetary revolution of people putting their money into cryptocurrencies. And, what's also really neat is that there's this economic, rule. It's called Gresham's Law. And it's the idea that bad money drives out good money. And it was experienced most commonly with gold and silver. where if the state says, oh, this coin, because it has this imprint on it, is worth X value, then when that silver coin got chipped, people would use the chipped coins because it weighed less, so it was literally less silver, and they would save the full fine coins. And so this was an example of how bad money would drive out good money. People would save what they thought was more valuable, which is the more quantity weighted coin, and just use the deteriorated coin. And I think what we're seeing today is people are saving their Bitcoin and spending their dollars because they're realizing in the long run that as a store of value, in order for me to preserve wealth that I have and not lose wealth over time, I'm going to put it in something like Bitcoin, because this is going up in value, and in the long run it could potentially be even more valuable than the dollars that I'm putting into it. And that's really what's beautiful. But in the short run, things can be more complicated than what we discuss in theory. Mm-hmm. And wow, I'm stoked for that. I'm happy to see that. That's very cool.
Yeah, I think I will say that a really cool thing too, if you think about AI and where AI and blockchain kind of fit into our future, is like blockchain really is your choice of, not complying with the government to a large degree. Obviously, there's going to be regulations that come into play. Hopefully, they're not something too crazy that just kills the space. But it's really your freedom, or your choice of freedom, away from the centralized systems. And I think centralized systems play an important role. I think they're not going to just completely go away, or at least not within the next decade or whatever. I think that AI and blockchain AI, I think, very much empowers the centralized powers, because it's all about if you collect as much data as you can, right, then you can run more and more powerful AIs. Whereas blockchain kind of incentivize or helps the general user, the general person. So I think I wouldn't say they're competing fields, but in some ways they give people options now. How much do you want to live your life centrally, and how much do you want to live your life decentralized? So I think just having that option is better than not having that option.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. The central powers are here now, but yeah, I like Bitcoin for those reasons, that it is decentralizing, and that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing too is that right now it's expanding outside of just sending money. It's now you can do loans. They're setting up insurance. You can trade all these NFT things. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. All these crypto arts and different collectibles is now becoming a big hype thing. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a completely free market at some point.
And one thing I wanted to say, because you mentioned this about regulations on cryptos, is that even under this anarchic rule, there's not an absence of rules. There's rules. There's rules everywhere. I mean, there's rules in so many decentralized spaces. Mm-hmm. You walk into a shop, for example, and if you think there's no rules in there, you'll find yourself out the door very soon. So there's rules everywhere. There's just no laws. Legality is imposed by these states. And I think we can make laws obsolete, especially ones that are, more harmful than helpful. Mm-hmm. And I think those are, anything that make nonviolent crimes. It's nonviolence. People are contracting voluntarily. This is very important, and this is kind of absent from our society at some points, especially with things like marijuana, for example, or drugs. Alcohol, in my opinion, is should not be illegal, but it's something that shouldn't be regarded as any different from other drugs. Mm-hmm. And I think with social media too, social media can be a drug. and it shouldn't be illegal, but it can be used in moderation and it can be used responsibly. Mm-hmm. If you begin to use it irresponsibly, then that harm will be a result of your actions, and you gotta you gotta have self-responsibility in many aspects of your life, and controlling your social media usage is something that people kind of disregard. They want it to not be their fault if they spend 12 hours a day on social media, and it's just where we're at right now. And I think reality is gonna totally exist with social media, but it's up to you to just not be addicted to it. It's interesting in a way, and I'm not trying to shame addictions. Maybe I am. I'm not sure, but I'm trying to say that life requires responsibility, right. And it's up to you how you want to spend it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where, I think personally, I'm a big believer in balance and discipline. I think everything in moderation is good. So obviously, and you can get addicted to literally anything, whether it be social media, whether it be like an activity. It could even be like running, which is like, you could argue like in moderation is super healthy for you, but I think almost anything in the human experience can become an addiction. So that's where discipline comes into play, or taking responsibility for yourself, is how do you, discipline is really just like control over yourself and control over your own life and what you want to do at any moment. And so, yeah, I think, that's what I would say.
Going back to, because this has got me interested, the Protestant work ethic, and I learned this from Thaddeus Russell, who was used to be a professor at Occidental. So anyways, he has this book, A Renegade History, and he talks about how the Protestants have two major principles. One being work as a virtue in itself. The other is more along the concept of getting married and having children, the nuclear family concept. And I don't want to touch on that concept. That could be for another discussion. But the concept of work and kind of disregarding productivity in that sense, or what you want to do. Even if you're suffering at your job, a traditional Protestant would say, well, that's what life is about, is working. And if you're working, that's what's good, and that's what matters. And I disagree. I think that, being productive is really what matters, and having fun in some ways that you can, enjoying your life. And when you have societies that are able to flourish and create beautiful art, architecture, sciences, like the Renaissance, these types of periods in life where society is able to, forego work and farming or agricultural production, things that, some economists say, I get this confused, but it's higher order goods, which are, goods that are created, like capital goods, that help people specialize in more industries and things. And then there's, I think I'm getting this right, lower order goods, which are your first order goods, your food, your shelter, and so forth. And when you get into these societies that are able to have higher order goods, and really, technology is a deflationary force. We become, with technology, more productive. And then this is what drives prices down. What's driving prices up is the government's ability to create more money, lowering the value of each monetary unit. Mm-hmm. So it's a simultaneous force of the purchasing power of the dollar devaluing, as well as additional money being created that make it able to pay for more goods. Mm-hmm. And this drives up, this artificial demand drives up prices. So really, with Bitcoin, that's purely deflationary. With a monetary revolution into the crypto world, there's opportunity, very fertile ground for these luxuries that we've never seen before to come about. And with the technology that we have, man, like we can't even we can't even consider the beautiful art or inventions that will come in X amount of years in time. And that's what I think, we got to focus on is progress,
Yeah.
the future, and not being so regressive. Man, oh man, like, and don't get it twisted. The mainstream term for progressive, I'm a progressive,
Mm-hmm.
is regressive. They're misnamed, I believe. But really, the true progressives, in the literal sense of the term, I believe, are the anarchists, the decentralizing people who and also not just the anarchists, but people who are in the crypto world, people who are in this technological world, and want to use it as a platform to keep evolving our society and humanity, and that's beautiful. I think that is something to be championed and not afraid of.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree that, the the term progressive has definitely changed in meaning over time, but I think at the core of, what a progressive is it's someone that wants to evolve the world, push the limits of the world forward, you know. And I think, yeah, crypto is a super cool space in which people are doing that kind of stuff. I think it's really cool right now because everything is getting very creative. Like, even you see the gaming industry is super big, and that's just a bunch of people creating a video game, I think, one thing that I think is just crazy is if you think in 2 to 3 years, maybe Apple Glass will have dropped, which is going to be like an augmented reality glasses that people can just wear. And, Apple, they're going to be able to pump those out like crazy. So millions of people now have a computer on their face, and that would allow you to see like holograms in the real world. And so now the crypto space is super big into these NFTs and virtual items because, like, imagine I could have like virtual Yeezy shoes, in the future, and I could wear those in real life. And I think that's where, things get kind of weird, like culturally. I think there will be some weird cultural movements there. But it's just another avenue for people to create. It's just another space for people, brilliant minds to design and create new things. So
Can you help me understand the virtual Yeezys?
yeah. So like, imagine, when you go on Snapchat or Instagram and you could put those filters on your face.
Uh-huh.
Like, imagine if you had glasses that could do that, right? So when I looked at someone, they could have a virtual tattoo on them, or they could have a virtual T-shirt overlaid on top of their normal T-shirt. I know it sounds like super. It's like almost like Ready Player One,
Sure.
and it sounds like super crazy, like this is super far out. But I would say this is probably like 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 years, like around the corner. Like, this is gonna become a thing, at least for like, whether it be for high fashion, some subculture of fashion. But yeah, this space is like definitely developing rapidly right now.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool. I met a dude one time. He was a student of architecture, but he described it as virtual architecture, where, say you're driving on a street, you go around a corner, and someone could have tweeted something, and where they're tweeting, that tweet would exist in time, virtually, in that position.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. And then you could have like visual tweets that are like digital, but in the real world.
Yep.
But I guess going back to reality, do digital things exist?
Like, as a philosophical question
Well,
of.
for example, if you had these Apple glasses, say I put these glasses on and I'm able to see your virtual Yeezys that you're wearing. Does that exist? This is, I guess, maybe it's a philosophical question.
I mean, I would say it virtually exists and it physically does not exist.
So, is virtual reality in existence? Maybe, is it in existence?
So, I guess the way I would describe it is, so you have augmented reality, mixed reality, and virtual reality. Augmented reality is basically, I can overlay a virtual item into like the real world, right? So if we were all wearing these Apple glasses, you know, like you could make a virtual dog just run around the carpet, right? We could see the rest of the world as normal, but there would be like these weird virtual objects. Then you have virtual reality, which is like full-on immersed experience. The real world does not exist anymore, and you're in like a completely virtual world. And mixed reality is anywhere in between those two spaces of reality. So you can think about it as, you know, you almost have a slider now to like make things more virtual or less virtual. But an easy use case like you can imagine for AR will be when you're walking on the streets, rather than seeing closed and open signs, you could just see like a virtual closed or open sign based off like, you know, Google data on the business, right? So you literally wouldn't have to like go look into the store to see if they're open or not. It would just say, no, this place is closed. Or, you know, let's say you're waiting at a bus stop, right? And you're waiting for the bus to show up. Like, you would, you know, maybe see an alert like, hey, the bus is pulling up right now, you know? And you might see like a little button that says like, hey, like this bus costs 25 cents or $1 to get on. So in that way, we'll get a lot of cool like productivity tools out of it. But I think like any technology can be used as a tool or a weapon. So that's why I think it's super important to be very mindful about, you know, building these new technologies and how we can, you know, build the best future with them.
With virtual reality, does you get immersed like Ready Player One, but you don't feel something. When I put the Oculus Rift on or something that's a VR thing on my head, I'm not actually touching objects. They don't exist.
Right.
But that is still an experience.
Right.
But is that a real experience? How is that different than a dream?
So are we saying psychologically? The crazy thing is psychologically, it is a real experience.
Okay.
You have now crossed the lines between a video, which a video is like, you know, your brain knows is not an experience, to like now actually tricking the brain into thinking that was like a valid experience. You can obviously still tell like, you know, you can differentiate the virtual world from real world. You know, I don't know what's going to happen with kids. I personally think this technology should be like 21 plus or something like that, or like there should be some sort of regulations around like how quick your kids can just jump into these things.
Okay. What is your fear with children having access to virtual reality?
I mean, I think my fear is more like just about like you want to introduce technology to kids in a good way. And I don't know what that way is yet. But I'm assuming that way is to start them with showing them the real world and how things in the real world operate, and then why these technologies exist and why we now use them, you know? Rather than just having them, you know, jump on an iPad or jump straight into some VR goggles and like learn it for themselves. Like, I think that's a lot scarier, you know? You know, there's I forget how the quote goes, but it's like the idea is like the 5 people you spend the most time with like are the most influential over your lives, right? And the weird thing about now is like anyone can be an influence over anyone's life, right? Like who you watch on YouTube or, you know, a character you watch in a TV show, like that could be one of your top 5 most influential people, right? So the more that you just give kids with no judgment like the ability to I mean, I'm talking about at a really young age when they can't even like make, you know, they don't have good decision making skills. Like I think we got to be pretty cautious about how they're being influenced and, you know, the best measures of how to teach people about these technologies.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I guess that's really cool. But that has you concerned that kids will just be like not knowing reality from virtual?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I guess what I'm trying to say is just that like, I'm trying to figure out a good example. I mean, just like you don't want someone to like drive a car too young, right?
Sure.
Like, it's because like one, they're their decision making skills are probably not at an all-time high.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's probably a bunch of other reasons neurologically, like why you would want to give them some time to grow before, like, you know, before
Sure.
they can drive or whatever. So I'm just thinking, like, we need to kind of create a framework around, like, how we educate people on these tools.
Okay.
And I mean, I wouldn't say TikTok is out of control, you know, but like you can definitely, you know, I don't know what I'm
No, I know what I know.
You know,
I know exactly what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. Well, I did want to make this point going back to the progressive ideology and the regressive ideology. My girlfriend Bree, she made a great point. She said, with technology has freed, forget exactly how she put it, but she said that in liberating women from the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
more or less, I'm not saying, these are my words, not hers.
Mm-hmm.
In liberating women from the kitchen, historically, it has been due in a large part to technology, with the inventions of the oven, the stove, the refrigerator, microwave, XYZ. They don't have to spend all their time making bread, for example.
Mm.
And that is something that's very interesting to look at. I think yeah, I was trying to clarify what I meant by progressive in reference
Yeah.
to that.
I mean, I guess to go off what you're saying though is like, you know, I think that's kind of the goal of what we want technology to be in many ways, is like it's supposed to help us with a bunch of, you know, the basic activities that we don't really care about doing, like chores or whatever that be, you know, and just allow us to maximize our free time to do or create or be or whatever, you know, just to live, right? Like the more convenient you make eating, the more convenient you make like all of these things, right, gives you more time to just do whatever you want, you know.
And going off of that, back again, this has been a theme of this podcast, the Puritan work ethic. You get shamed if you're not working at hours of the day. You know, what are you doing? You're not working? Why aren't you working? Like, shame on you. But this is what technology has brought us, the opportunity to watch movies, to play video games, to leisure, but also to focus on what we're interested in. People make money from playing video games, so it's not necessarily this frame or this lens of labor that is necessary for people's lives, and we lose track of that.
Mm-hmm. I think we also lose track of like, what are we working for, right? Like, what is your goal, you know, with work? Is your goal to be fulfilled? Is your goal just to make money?
Most people will say just to make money.
Yeah.
To exist. I just need to work. And that's very interesting because you know, there's opportunity now to work not just to exist, but to work how you would like to.
Yeah.
And how you can have fun and enjoy your time and your life and have more ownership over that to some degree. This is where I think love comes from, is your ability to enjoy what you do with who and whom you operate with and work with. And
Mm-hmm.
it's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, you know, like, people talk about, like, we underwent like a period of becoming free to work, right? You can work on whatever you want to work on now. And, you know, this has evolved into like freedom to be, right? So now it's like people identifying with whatever they want to identify with, right? But, you know, the ultimate goal of this is just like, yeah, like we're just tending towards the freedom to live and to do, you know, whatever you want to do in your daily life, you know, which I think that's like exciting and kind of, you know, allows us to build like cool stuff.
Absolutely. Well, is there anything you would also like to discuss?
I don't know.
I think that was great. If it's all right with you, I would like to wrap it up there. And where can people reach out to you or get into contact with you?
So you can check out our company at Cleos.live. That's our website. And you can check out me on LinkedIn, Chris Iba, or on Instagram, chris.iba. But I've been kind of off social media as of recently. But
what are some exciting ventures that you got going for yourself that you're super excited about?
I'm super excited. We're launching the app within the next week or so. So that's where a lot of my time has been going towards recently. Excited just like continue trading crypto stuff. And then my friend Leo and I, or our mutual friend Leo, and I are going to start a podcast. So we'd love for you to come on the podcast at some point in the future, you know?
Absolutely. I'd love to.
And yeah, I mean, I think what would be cool too is just to form more of a podcast community, because I don't know if you know, like Chris Pye, he's got a podcast now.
Right on.
A couple of our other, friends from high school are podcasting or doing some sort of media producing content. So, it's a cool space, definitely.
That's awesome. Chris, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers. Peace.
Peace.